or find out an abstraction where there is no explicitly programmed way, find out that abstraction so that it will impart the decisive capability to the machine, right? And the decision making capability to the machine. And that can be done in multiple ways. There are multiple ways in which you can help the machine, or you can build algorithms with which the machine can understand that abstraction or that actionable knowledge, which will be able to take actions or will have decisive power. And we have already seen primarily three types of approaches, starting with the supervised learning, where you have enough of data from a supervisor, where data get labeled or assigned a class label by a supervisor, and you call that data as training data. From that training data, you should be able to train a machine, and the machine should be able to take it from there, right? That's what the supervised learning paradigm is. And the other extreme is completely unsupervised learning, where it's all about the machine is trying to figure out, clustering is the typical example, and then in between there is reinforcement learning or reinforced learning, where what is happening is you get feedback at every step, and then you adjust yourself. The algorithm will get a feedback at every step, and then your learning is adjusted in such a way that you have a smooth learning, and you get rewards or penalty for every step. That's called reinforcement learning. That's pretty much what we have done in the last class. We'll move on and we'll look at a very specific supervised learning paradigm. So the typical setting for a supervised learning paradigm goes like this. You have training data, you have got xi, yi, where xi's are, you can assume that these are photographs, and yi's are your class labels. This can be, yi can be the label of a Maruti car or a Benz car, and you have m such training points, and your agenda is to decide y for a given x. So from your available training data, you should be able to find that knowledge, actionable knowledge or abstraction, or the model with which you should be able to take decisions on an unseen case. In short, we call it capability to generalize beyond what it has seen. And this is a typical setting for a supervised learning paradigm. This is where it is, and goes like this. It's a supervised learning paradigm. So there is a generator, the photographer, supervisor who is assigning the label. You get xi, yi pairs, and there is a learning algorithm, and which learns a function f alpha of x, which I've already mentioned you. Alpha is a parameterized form of the set of functions f. Given an x, it produces f alpha of x. And when y matches with f alpha of x, you say like you have got a correct prediction or classification, and otherwise you try to adjust the parameters of your model, which is essentially alpha, right? This is something that we have already seen. You've got training data, you get feature representations, and you get, once you have feature representations, you assign, the supervisor will assign labels. And so what you get is essentially a training data set, and you get a learn model. Given a new test case, what you do is you extract the same set of features. Say, for example, if apple is represented, or fruit is represented in terms of its color, its weight, shape, etc., etc. If these are the features with which you have represented your training data, you'll use the same set of features to represent your test data also. Then using appropriate the learn model and the appropriate testing strategy, you will test out and see like what is being predicted. Is it predicted as an apple or orange? So that's what it is. So from these are things that we have already seen in the last class, right? Let us look at a very specific algorithm today called naive Bayesian classifier. I'm sure all of you, and what is it? It's essentially like, so supervised learning paradigm is all about mimicking the experience of a supervisor, or trying to learn from training data, right? Training data is nothing but data along with labels. You have m of them. And can we establish a probabilistic relationship between the data described in the training part, which includes the actual description of the data in terms of its features? For example, a car can be represented in terms of its make, its grill, the type of the grill, type of fuel injection used, type of engine used, kind of what you call transmission mechanism, etc., etc. And then these are the ways in which a car can typically get represented. And you say this car is actually, the label is a Maruti or a Merc or a Benz, right? So these are the labels and can be established from the description of the data. That means the description in terms of the features of the data or the attributes with which the data is described, and can we connect them probabilistically to what you call the actual class labels. Can the model represent a probabilistic relationship between the attribute values or the attribute, what do you call it, attribute representations that the training data captures and the corresponding available labels out there. So for example, it can be as simple as, okay, you see that statement, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and then what do you call, then it lives in, spends most of the time in water, and then it's probably a duck, right? It's probably a duck. Where do you use it? There are multiple, it's essentially the Bayesian classifier or naive Bayesian classifier is essentially a probabilistic prediction model. And it works on the principle of Bayes' theorem. Let us go to an example, understand what it means, and then come back, all right? I don't want to, tell you a lot about these equations. These are things that you must have learned in your undergrad or even +2. This is called Bayes' theorem, and we'll come back to it. Let's give you, let me give you a very basic context, all right? Let's assume there is a village, and the village has 53 men and 47 women, all right? So what's the probability that any random person that you see in that village is a man? What is the probability? Any random person found in that village is a man. What is the probability? You can put in your chat. Yeah. Man, it's 0.53. Why do you say that? It's 0.53 primarily because it's out of 100 people out there, 53 are men, right? This is, we call, without any further information. We only have information on the number of men out there and the number of women out there. We can say, okay, yeah, for 53% of the people are men and 47 are women, right? That's good. This is called a prior information. It's called a priori probability in the context of Bayesian theory, right? And now we make we have a little more information. It says 35 among the men and 15 among the women are smokers, right? Okay. So what's the probability that given a man, he's a smoker? Given a man, it's a smoker. He's a smoker. It'll be 35 out of 53, right? And given a woman, she's a smoker. It's 15 divided by 47, right? Now comes the interesting part. You observe a person inside a cubicle, and you don't know, like, you can't see that person, all right? Find the probability values. It's a man and it's a woman. Why don't you take a piece of paper, all of you, and tell me, you observe that a person inside a cubicle in that village is smoking, and you need to find out the probability that it's a man and it's a woman. How do you do this? And that's where you use Bayes' theorem. So what does Bayes' theorem says? It says even C2 up to Cn be mutually exclusive and exhaustive events. What is mutually exclusive? Say, for example, mutually exclusive events, when you're tossing a coin, there are two events that can happen, right? I mean, let's assume there are only two events. One is a head turns up or a tail turns up, right? If a head turns up, the tail won't turn up, right? This is called mutually exclusive. One prevents the occurrence of the other. And what is exhaustive? Collectively, you have all the possibilities covered. That's called exhaustive. And you have got C1, C2 up to Cn are a set of events, mutually exclusive and exhaustive events. So, for example, in our case, events can be like, in our case, there are two classes of people, men and women, and these are the two. I mean, if a particular person is a man, can't be a woman. We for the time being, we'll what do you call, we'll consider that there are only men and women in the group, in the village. All right, these are mutually exclusive classes, and these are collectively, these are the only classes available there. All right, it covers the entire thing. And if A is an event which co-occurs, primarily like occurs with C1 or C2 or Cn, which means that the event is smoking. All right, if the smoking can happen with a man or a woman. All right, so A is the event which captures smoking, and C1 and C2 are the event that the observed person is a man or the observed person is a woman. Right. If that's the case, the probability of Ci, say a man given smoking, would be, can be, I mean, how does it, it's called conditional probability. Probability of Ci given A can be written as probability of Ci intersection A divided by probability of A, which further can be expanded as probability of A given Ci into probability of Ci divided by probability of A. And as per total probability theory, probability of A can be written as probability of, there are only two classes now, C1 into probability of A given C1 plus probability of C2 plus probability C2 into probability of A given C2. So in our case, A is smoking. So good. Can you compute the probability that's a man and a woman? So you got, what are the probability values that you need to do this, to do this computation? You need that a priori value. I've got two classes here, or two events, C1 and C2. It's called probability of a man is equal to 53 divided by 100, it's 0.53, and probability of a woman would be 47 divided by 100, so you get 0.47. All right, and so what you have further is probability of a smoker, probability of smoking given S given a man would be 35 divided by 53, and probability of smoking given woman would be 15 divided by 47. You got these values, and what you're asked to compute is probability of a man given smoking. All right, so probability of a man given smoking can be written as probability of man into probability of smoking given man divided by probability of, as per the Bayes rule, we can write this as probability of man into probability of smoking given man divided by probability of man into probability of smoking given man plus probability of woman into probability of smoking given woman, and you get that. Are you able to compute it? Anybody who has issue here? I'll just put the Bayes rule. I just wanted you to have a basic understanding of the Bayes rule. What does it say? It's actually converting, you have prior information. Prior information is before you observe anything about the men or women in that village, you should be able to, like a priori, you should be able to say, like, what's the probability of finding a randomly found person is a man? It's a priori. Probability of man and probability of woman we can compute. It's called a priori probability. All right. And then conditioned over a class or conditioned over an event, what's the probability of these are two events which are dependent. Conditional probability essentially captures the dependence of what you call the measure of dependency of an event over others. Essentially, like, it's basically the probability of their co-occurrence divided by the probability of the event on which is conditioned on. So, for example, probability of smoking given man is essentially probability of man and smoking divided by probability of a man. That's what that's a meaning of conditional probability. So you have conditioned over classes. Say, for example, you have probability of smoking given man, that's given to you. Probability of smoking given woman, it's given to you. So these are called conditioned over. In our context, we call it conditioned over an event or a class. I mean, in our case, we call it a class. The event is class. The probability that what do you call it? I mean, the conditioned over conditioned over the class man. What's the probability that the person is smoking? So probability of smoking over man. smoking a given man and probability of a smoking given woman. So this is what it is. All right. So these are called conditional class conditional probabilities, and what you compute, essentially compute, I mean, see, basically you have got prior probabilities, you have got class conditional probabilities. Class condition, I mean, probability of smoking given a man or a woman is called class conditional probabilities. And what you're trying to achieve is how do you predict the class given an observation. Observation is you see that the person is smoking. So condition or smoking, what is the probability of a man? So these probabilities are called, these values are, I mean, what do you call it? Conditional value, I mean, probability values are called, essentially called posteriori. So posteriori is essentially like converting priors using class conditional to what is called posteriori is what the Bayes rule does. So Bayes rules is essentially a mechanism or a means by which you can convert priori probabilities conditional observations to posterior probabilities. That's what it is. That's what the Bayes rules, I mean, essential, the gist of Bayes rule is. All right. Are you able to compute? If you can respond. Probability of a man given smoking and probability of a woman given smoking using the Bayes theorem. So PCIs are called the prior probabilities. A given CIs are called the class conditional probabilities, conditional over the class in the context of Bayes classifier, and CI given A are called the posteriori probabilities. I need a verbal confirmation from a few so that I can pursue further. Are you able to get these values, 0.7 and?
Yes, sir.
Anybody has a problem? It's pretty straightforward. This is your +2 math, but I thought I'll just what do you call it? Start from there so that you are able to pick it up from there. And we're going to implement also. I mean, we need to. What about probability of a woman given smoking? What's the value that you get? Anybody has an issue in computing this? Okay, somebody got 0.3. Yes, good. All of you, shall we proceed further? Shall we complicate this a little further? Yes. Anybody has an issue? Just put your text. I mean, if you have an issue, just let me know. Anyone who is unable to get these values, I mean, able to compute using Bayes, unable to compute using Bayes. It's the simplest thing that I can introduce you to the world of machine learning. That's where I started here. Shall we proceed? Okay. I presume that everybody is able to apply Bayes rule and find the probability values, and let's move on. It's simple, it's straightforward. Okay, let's complicate this a little further. All right, 15 among the men and 35 among the women are good singers. Right, you on top of it, you're making one more observation. 15 among the men and 35 among the women are good singers. You observe that a person inside a cubicle is smoking and singing. Find the probability values. Is it a man or a woman? Can you compute this? Can you compute this? I'll just show the slides again. You can copy this. 15 among the men and 35 among the women are good singers. And you observe that a person inside a cubicle is smoking and singing. Find the probability values. Is it a man or a woman? The probability of, what are the probability values that you need to compute? Probability of man given smoking and singing. Singing, use some other, let's use the letter G. So probability of man, M, given S and G, right? S and G. That's what it is. Basically, smoking and singing. G is singing. Let's label it as G for convenience. S and G. Probability of M given SG can be written as, and probability of W given SG. It can be written as probability of, how do you complete this? How do you expand this using Bayes' rule? Probability of M given SG can be written as probability of SG given M into probability of M divided by probability of SG given M into probability of M plus probability of SG given W into probability of W. Do you have the probability values for, the class condition over the class man? Do you have the probability for SG? What is probability of SG given M? Do you have those values? Do you have those values from the available information? Do you have those values? Probability of SG given M. You understand that you need probability of SG given M and probability of SG given W to compute probability of M given SG and probability of W given SG, right? The posteriores. Do you have the class conditional probabilities, probability of SG given M and probability of SG given W? Yes or no? No. I get 1. Deepak says no. Anybody here? Anyone else has an opinion? You can even unmute your one at a time.
Hello?
Yes?
Sir, is it 35 by 100 into 15 by 100?
Is it? You tell me.
I think so, because
no. There are certain assumptions you need to make to compute like that. That's essentially the point. That's essentially the point that I want to make.
Okay.
You got it, right? That's a crux of it. That's a crux of my session on naive Bayesian classifier.
Okay.
Anyone here? Hey, somebody's saying it's basically probability of SG given M is needed, right? You agree? It's basically, what is SG? Probability of SG given M. It's a joint probability of singing, probability of singing and smoking and singing, given it's a man. You need that. And you also need probability of smoking and singing given a woman. These are class conditional probabilities. You need those values, right? Probability of man who's a smoker and singer. How do you get that, Parimala? I've not given any information. How do you compute that value? You can't do that. How do you do that? Vinayak, how do you do that?
Sir, we know the probability of a man to be a smoker is 15 by 35, right?
Yes.
And the probability that he'll be a good singer is 35 by 53. So we be using the multiplicative rule, we can.
Can you do that?
Sir, I get your point that we don't know the exact number of smokers among good singers.
What is it called? That's exactly the point. If you can get that right, like naive Bayesian classifier. Have you got, you essentially, probability measure is assigned on events, right? And probability of AB can be written as probability of A into probability of B. Only when? Ritik, you said it right. Probability of AB can be probability of AB. If A and B are mutually exclusive, what will be probability of AB? Mutually exclusive. What will be probability of AB? What is mutually exclusive?
0.
There is nothing common between A and B. Then what will be probability of AB?
0.
0. Right? Probability of AB would be 0 if A and B are mutually exclusive. If they are independent,
then multiplication of probability of A and B.
Probability of AB can be written as probability of A into probability of B only when A and B are independent events. That's a definition of two independent events. Right? You can apply only when, Ritik, you can apply only when, I completely agree to your point. you can apply it only when you presume that these two events are independent. All right. What is our current status? We need probability of singing and smoking given a man, but I don't know, right? Are these two events? What are the events? Singing and smoking are independent, conditioned over the class man, right? If we can assume that conditioned over the class man or a woman, if the events of singing and smoking are independent, probability of SG given M can be written as probability of S given M into probability of G given M, right? Then you say that the events singing and smoking are independent, conditioned over the class man. All right? Independent, conditioned over the class man. Let me show you the slide. You able to see this screen? Given a set of k mutually exclusive and exhaustive cases, say you have two classes, two events, man and woman, all right, which have prior probabilities P, C1, C2, etc., Ck. All right, you have got two C1, a man and woman. All right, and data is described in n attributes. Say your data is currently like your data is described. Somebody is singing and smoking, 2 dimensions for the data. All right, I need to compute probability of A, singing and smoking given man. It can be written as pi, the product of probability of singing given class into probability of smoking given class. If this is the case, if this is possible, we say that these two events are conditionally independent. All right, class conditionally independent, to be very precise. This is called class conditional independence. Going back to our original problem. Everybody, have you got the gist of the idea? I've got two features now, singing and smoking, two classes, men and women. I need to compute probability of SG given man. It's basically a joint probability of singing and smoking given man, conditioned of the class. Class conditional probability, this is essentially a joint probability. And I don't have, unless otherwise, I don't have a means to compute all these joint probabilities, probability of SG given man and probability of SG given woman. I won't be able to compute probability of man given SG and probability of woman given SG. And what comes to my rescue is if I assume that there is independence, there is class conditional independence over SG, the features S and G, which means that probability of SG given man can be written as probability of S given man into probability of G given man, G is singing, G given man. Then I say the events singing and smoking are conditionally independent over the class man, right? If we make that assumption, we'll be able to say, okay, probability of SG given man I need to compute, all right? Probability of SG given man, I can write it as probability of S given man, which I know like S given man would be 35 by 53 into probability of G given man, 15 by 53, all right? That also I have. Likewise, I can compute for women also, and I'll be able to compute the probability of a man and probability of a woman. Why don't you do that? Just do that. Any questions here? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? Just one before we get into the actual the calculations. Why do we do this? What is probability of SG given man? What is joint probability? What are the possibilities? The event, what are the possible events? Probability of singing and smoking given a man. Given a man, there can be a person who is only singing, who can only sing, but don't smoke. There can be a person who will smoke, won't sing. There'll be people, there'll be men who will not smoke or sing, and there'll be men who will smoke and sing. There are 4 possibilities there. Do you get it? So is the case with condition over the class women also. Good? Which means that if I have to compute the probability from available training data or from the available data, if I have to compute by the probability values, the joint probability values, probability of SG given M, I need all these, I need to compute, I need to find the numerical values for all these joint probabilities, and I need to have data which gives me all these 4 possibilities, right? The values for all these 4 possibilities. You get it? Likewise, my probabilistic model would have probability of SG given man with 4 combinations, probability of SG given women with 4 possibilities. Do you get it? But the moment I assume that S and G are conditionally independent over a man or a woman, I can say probability of SG given man is equal to probability of S given man into probability of G given man, which is nothing but conditional independence, class conditional independence. The moment I have class conditional independence, what do I get? I can independently look at every feature. I can look at the singing feature and see a condition over man. Out of the men, how many are singing? Out of the woman, how many are singing? Out of the men, how many are smoking? Out of the women, how many are smoking? I do have an easier way of computing my probability values just by the frequency count, right? And that frequency counting from a training data becomes very, very difficult if I have to compute the joint probability values, because I need to have enough of data for every possible combination, which I typically won't have. Right? Yeah, we'll come back to it a little later. Good. Just compute the joint probability values with conditional independence, and then compute the probability of a man given smoking and singing, and a probability of woman given smoking and singing. When we compute that, just compute it.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, we have been calculating the probability of smoking and a person smoking and singing, given that it is a man or a woman, right?
No, it's a man. That's what it is. That's what you need to compute. I mean, from the Bayes theorem, you need condition over a man. You need to compute the probability of smoking and singing, not man or woman.
Sir, but the given condition is that the person is singing and smoking.
Singing and smoking given the man. And see, basically your problem is compute the probability of a man given person is, your observations are smoking and singing. So your posterior probability you need to compute is probability of a man given smoking and singing, and probability of a woman given smoking and singing. As per the Bayes rule, you need class conditional probabilities, probability of smoking and singing given man, and probability of smoking and singing given woman. You need these values. And for those values, how do you get those values? Essentially, like, how do you get those values? By frequency count from a training data. You need to get all the possible combinations, right?
Yes.
A man can be smoking and singing, may not be smoking and singing, can be smoking but not singing, can be singing but not smoking.
Yes, sir.
Right? You get 4. You get other 4 in the other women class also, which means that you need enough data for each of these combinations so that you get these joint probability values. But the moment you introduce conditional independence, what you get is probability of SG given M can be written as probability of S given M into probability of G given M. Right? Okay. This is what it is. And so which means that you can essentially look at every feature, compute the frequency count, and compute the corresponding probability values and multiply them to get what you call the joint probability values, right?
Okay.
That's what it is. That's what it is. I mean, I just wanted you to get this right, because you see, I initially thought of putting all theory stuff in front of you, but I wanted you to have that understanding, because it's very trivial, Once you understand this is trivial. My point here is not to make you understand a lot about your Bayes rule, but rather, why do you make this class conditional independence? Basically, the conditional independence. All right. If you have got that right, and the moment you apply a Bayes rule to design a classifier, you call that a Bayesian classifier. And in the Bayesian classifier, if you have more than one feature, now you have two features, smoking and singing. If you have more than one feature, you get into a context of joint probabilities conditioned over classes. Then your probability computations, joint probability computations becomes difficult. Then what do? You assume that the features are independent conditioned over the class. Then your life becomes easy. And this assumption is a very naive assumption, because given the class men, you presume that smoking and singing are independent events, right? Which may be an idiotic assumption. So the Bayesian classifier you build with this idiotic assumption or this naive assumption is called a naive Bayesian classifier. That's essentially the point. Right? You can compute Shubhasri, you can compute the rest of the things also. You can compute women, a woman given smoking and singing. All of you, I want all of you to go look at it. Yeah, now you say like you have got Jain Kumar, you say like 0.47 and 0.53 for woman, which means that now the person who is smoking seems to be a woman, right? With little more observation, right? Initially, we were looking only at the smoking case, and now we have the singing case also. Now looks like, yeah, it's called a maximum posteriori classifier, right? It's also called maximum posteriori. What it does is like you compute the probability values for the mutually exclusive events, right? And based on you have two mutually exclusive events become, the observed person is a man or a woman. These are mutually exclusive, and out of which you assign to the class for which you have maximum posteriori probability. You have maximum posteriori probability in your case. You can see that in the earlier case, only with smoking, a maximum posteriori probability was with the class man. You said, hey, it's a man. One more observation. You say that, no, it's a woman, right? It's a woman, all right? This classifier is called a naive Bayesian classifier. And
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, what is the point of this theorem, sir? Suppose if the assumption turns out to be wrong.
That's what it's called, idiotic classifier. Assumption can be wrong, but it works in practice. I completely understand. Right from the days this particular, your question is on conditional independence, right? The assumption
Yes,
is
sir.
idiotic. Condition can be, the assumption can be idiotic, and it's also called an idiotic classifier.
So
But in
why?
practical case, it works. It works in practice. You get a lot of independent features. Say, for example, especially in the text classification and the Google, the initial days of Google Gmail spam filter was a naive Bayesian classifier. And most of, like, I would say, like more than 60-70% of the production level classifiers in the early days of text processing where naive Bayesian classifier, it's a favorite for many. It works in practical cases primarily because it's observed that you can presume independence, conditional independence. It works in practice. I completely agree your statement. It can be an idiotic assumption, but it works. It works. That's what it
Okay,
is.
sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? I just want you to get, you got, if you want to get a little piece of code on naive Bayesian classifier, you have plenty. But I want you to understand why that naive assumption. The naive assumption is primarily because computing joint probabilities over all the possible combinations is non-trivial. You need a lot of data and a lot of compute. The moment you have conditional independence over features, which means that your features are independent over the class, your singing feature is independent to the smoking feature. All right. condition on the class man or woman, you have a beautiful way to implement. And this is, I repeat, this is an idiotic assumption. It is a naive assumption. So the classifier itself is called a naive Bayesian classifier. It's called a naive Bayesian classifier. You understand the word meaning of naive, right? And people also call it idiotic classifier, but the surprising fact is it works beautifully in most of the practical context. All right, and what I'll give you a little assignment over here. All right, all of you have seen a spam filter. I mean, can we go further? Can you, all of you could observe this 0.47 and 0.53 with this naive class conditional independence, basically class conditional independence assumption over singing and smoking condition over the class. Anybody who is unable to do this, I'll just share. We have not done anything more than a simple base rule and what do you call your +2 math on probability theory. Shall we move further? Anyone has any questions? Let's get things cleared before we move on. And you must have seen like what do you call more observations refine your what do you call prediction, right? I mean, with singing added, it turned out to be a woman, and only with smoking you predicted that to be a man, right? Right, your observations can, and this is a typical property. I mean, your observations can refine your what do you call decisions because you see more, and then your decisions will become more and more accurate. So this is very natural. All right, it's called Bayesian reasoning also. Good. It's a characteristic of Bayesian reasoning. Shall we move further?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good. This is an example. I just wanted this is a typical what do you call textbook example. You have training data, play tennis. You have got how many features? You've got outlook, temperature, humidity. You've got 14 data points. Yeah, these I've taken from the internet. It's a typical textbook example, and you've got two classes: play tennis, yes or no. Play tennis, yes is one class. Play tennis, no is another class. This is your training data, right? And you're given a new what do you call like D15 or D20 or whatever. And say like, okay, hey, today is a sunny day, but mild temperature, humidity is normal, and wind is strong. Should I play tennis? That's your test case. So this is your training data. With this training data, you should be able to build a model, right? Build that set of probability values, and then with these probability values, given a new case, which is sunny day, mild temperature, humidity is normal, and wind is strong. And I should be able to, the machine should be able to, or the learned, with the learned model, the classifier should be able to say whether to play tennis or not. That's the prediction, right? With this training data, you should be able to build those probability values, and you should be able to predict, right? This is what can you build? How do you do this? This is what it is. You've got the training data. The first thing is play tennis yes or play tennis no. These are the two classes. Without any observation, you can say like from the training data, 9 says play tennis and 5 says don't play tennis, right? These are the two classes. So 9 out of 14 and 5 out of 14, these are the prior probability values. And what are your class conditional probabilities, right? And we presume that these are independent, which means that the features are independent given the class, given say from the class play tennis yes, the features outlook, temperature, humidity, and wind are independent. Right. Good. In that case, outlook is yeah, sunny. Sunny. I mean, you can see that in the play yes class. there are what we call two examples with Sunny and Play Yes. So likewise, you get all the possible values out there. You can do it for every other feature, and given a new case, will you be able to compute your probability values, your posteriori values? If I say case, it's a sunny day, temperature is mild, humidity is normal, and wind is strong. With these probability values, will you be able to, these are essentially what you call the probability of outlook given Play Tennis, yes, etc., etc. With these probability values, will you be able to compute the posteriori values and take a decision? Yes or no? This essentially you did, right? In your last example also, that smoking, yes. So essentially what you do is, from the training data, you compute all those, what are those values? You compute, initially you compute those prior probability values, you compute those class conditional probability values, and the class conditional, basically probability smoking and singing given man is class conditional, probability smoking, singing woman would be class conditional. And to compute, you do a, you make a naive assumption called probability of smoking given singing, given man, and probability of singing given man. These two are independent. You can independently count them, or whatever frequency count, and then you can, what do you call, find the, I mean, you can multiply those values to get the joint probability values. You make that assumption and you have the complete information with you, right? Have you seen a model here? What is your model here? Currently, what is your model? From the training data, you have created a knowledge abstraction. You have created a probabilistic abstraction, right? All right. And with that, you were able to, with that model, you were able to, given a new case, you were able to predict. Do you see learning here? Do you see machine learning here from training data? Do you see supervised learning? Yes. Right? It's a very basic form of what we call supervised learning paradigm. One of the algorithms, I'll just show you, like flash you through the initial set of slides, just to give you a flair of it. Bayesian classifier, yeah, we'll go back. If it walks like, if it is singing and smoking, then it's probably a woman, right? That's what you can make, right? You have made, right? Statistical classifier, probabilistic prediction, predicts class membership probabilities based on Bayes' theorem. And we assume that the classes are mutually exclusive and exhaustive. Attributes are independent given the class conditional independence. Naive, empirically proven to be useful. It scales, easy to scale because you can treat every feature independently. You can count, take the frequency count of every feature independently, and many applications, the relationship between the attributes and the set of values is non-deterministic. There's a probabilistic element, and that's where you go for this kind of modeling, right? You use a Bayesian classifier, right? Yeah, nothing much beyond this point, right? But can you build a spam filter, an email spam filter with this approach? Can you build an email spam filter? You can download spam emails from your Gmail box, right? And then you can have some useful mails also. So you get text, and you can use some what do you call standard code to convert text to vectors. So essentially, like some sort of TF-IDF for word vectors or whatever, right? And then can you build this kind of a classifier? Is it possible to build such a classifier?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what are those features? How do you compute? How do you represent text?
What, sir?
How do you represent text documents? Your training data, your description is in terms of text documents. There are multiple ways in which you can represent text documents. All right. So you've got two you have got training data, one set, you have got, say, let's assume that you have got 100 emails, which are good emails, 100 emails here, you know that these are spam emails. The first step is you can take useful words out of it. This is called a bag of words. You can collect the bag of words, right? Basically, you can remove all the common words. I can remove the commonly occurring words like the or whatever, right? These are called the stop words. You can remove all those stop words. You get a collection of words from the 200 documents you have in hand. Now, from the 200 documents you have in hand, what you can do is, for every document, you need a vectorial representation. You need to represent every document, every email, all right, in terms of this document collection, or in terms of this word collection. All right, and the most celebrated way of representing a document like this, I mean, the early on in the information retrieval era, it's called a TF-IDF. I want all of you to go back, look at TF-IDF. The idea is very simple. Given any email, you have a term or a word. You have a word, you have a term or a word. You look at the number of times in which this word occurs in that document. This is called a term frequency. And this same term can occur in, you have got 200 documents. The same term can occur in all the 200 documents, possible, can occur only in 20 documents, right? So you can also find the document frequency, the number of documents or the emails in which this term occurs. So you can, given a word from the bag of words that you have chosen, given an email and the bag of words, you can do two things. Given a word and a collection of emails, you can do two things. You can find in the email how many times this word occurs. This is called a term frequency. And you can also find, for that term, you can also find in the collection of documents, you have got 200 documents, how many among these 200 emails contain this word. This is called document frequency. 1 by document frequency can be called a inverse document frequency. So you can compute term frequency into inverse document frequency, right? You can multiply them, and what you get is called TF-IDF. I want all of you to go back, read about TF-IDF. This was a classic case, and now people have moved on. People are talking about what you call, and this cannot capture the relationship between words, and people have moved on, and people are talking about word-to-vec representations and things beyond that, right? Concept-to-vec and things like that. So what I want to say is, you need a representation for every email. So what I want you to look at is, can we build a spam filter with email spam filter with a naive-Bayesian classifier? How do you do it? You can use any standard library, Python standard library, just to what do you call it? Just to convert text to documents, and you can work along with your lab. And then, so you take your emails from your Gmail box. You can take some spam and some harm, convert into vectorial representation. It can be as simple as TF-IDF, or if you don't want, you can even take simple frequency counts. And once you have those vectorial representations, you get 200 vectors if you have got, say, you've got 500 words in a bag of words. So you get 200 500 dimensional vectors, and from those, that becomes your training data. And this belongs to 100 belongs to class of spam, 100 belongs to class of harm or good email. And then using the Bayesian principle, so you presume that, say, if I have to, say, if we assume that there are 500 words, your agenda is to predict whether it's a spam or harm or a good email, right? Probability of a spam given all these 500 dimensional features, right? How do you do it? Probability of these 500 dimensional features given a spam. This is the class conditional. If you have to get all the combinations for this 500, what are the possibilities? For every word, that particular email can have that word or may not have that word. This 500 can happen in how many combinations? This 500, each of these 500 features are words. Words are present or absent. You get two values for what do you call every feature. It's a yes or no, or 1 or 0, right? So 500 positions filled with a 1 or 0. How many combinations? Right? So one position you get a 1 or 0. You have two positions filled with a 1 or 0. You get 2 raised to 2, 4. All right. 500 positions, 2 raised to 3 positions. You get 2 raised to 3, 8 combinations. 2 raised to 500. You need to compute the probability values, all these, and then use those probabilities to, this becomes the class conditional probabilities, and you need to get these probabilities, use these probabilities to compute the posteriori. That's what it is, right? This is the challenge. With our naive assumption, what do? You can easily look at every feature separately, count those frequencies, and then put them back, right? Multiply them back to compute a joint probability, the class conditional probability, and you can use it. All right, good. So I want all of you 2 things. One is go back, look at TF IDF. How do you represent text as a vector? All right, that's first thing. And go and download one Python implementation of a naive Bayesian classifier. It can be like, you can, to start with, what I want is, you have got this tennis data. All right, let's not get into email spam filter today. You have this tennis data, and you have got and you have this data. It's a simple data. You can put that in a text file and manipulate. All right, and then what I want you to do is build a Bayesian classifier. We already have this Bayesian classifier, right? Write a Python code with which, given a new data point, like an outlook sunny, outlook overcast, temperature is hot, but the wind is weak, humidity is normal, can I play tennis or no? This model should be able to say yes or no. For this training data, for this simple training data, write a Python script which will implement a Bayesian classifier. It's straightforward, right? And that will become your next assignment. So for this tennis example, build a Bayesian classifier, build a naive Bayesian classifier. All right. At the same time, go explore about text representation, especially TF IDF. I'll put that in the TF IDF. Read about this, and then in due course of time, we'll build classifiers around this. All right. We'll even start with a naive Bayesian classifier. You build a small piece of code which will be a naive Bayesian classifier for predicting whether, given a new data point with some combination, should be able to predict. Good. So this is what it is about naive Bayesian classifier. And all I want to say here is, we have seen a supervised learning paradigm. In this supervised learning paradigm, what we do is, we build a model which is nothing but a probabilistic model. With this probabilistic model, we are able to predict the classes for any new incoming data point. That's what it is. All right. It's called a naive Bayesian classifier, and I think it's a part of your second module, naive Bayesian classifier. Do you guys need a little break, or we can continue? I can give you some 15 minutes break if you want, and then we can come back and look at another supervised learning paradigm. So this is the classic example for a supervised learning paradigm, a naive Bayesian classifier. What we have just seen is naive Bayesian classifier. I've already uploaded this slide in your classroom. You can download it, and if you want a break, otherwise I'll continue with a little more, and then okay. Yes, okay. We can wait for 10-15 minutes, not more than that. We'll be back by 11:30. That's fine. All right? 15 minutes. We'll be back by 11:30. Okay, good.